Well, welcome to the May 2022 meeting of the Historic Highway 99 Association of California. I do apologize for the delay. It was supposed to be a week earlier, but well, stuff's been going on, had to push it, so be it. Now, one announcement I would like to make for the association is we do have a bit of good news. I haven't made a formal announcement of it yet, but here we go. Been in contact with the Redlands Conservancy in Redlands, California, and they have expressed interest in getting historic Route 99 signs posted in Redlands. We talked a bit more, and the signs have already been ordered. They should be delivered sometime in the next few days, and they will be the ones working with the city to get them posted. So we've ordered 6 signs for the city of Redlands. So finally, we're gonna get a little bit more historic route signage here in Southern California.
Excellent news.
We are hoping that that will be a bit of a push for some of the other cities like Calamasa, Beaumont, Banning. Those things are also in, let's see, I'm not sure how to put it. So there's a section of 1925 concrete in technically in Calamasa. It's between Calamasa and Beaumont, that it's on a section of road called Roberts Road that is going to be demolished. It's a beautiful section of original US 99. There's no way to save it except for the date stamps. There are 2 really nice date stamps on the roadway. We are working with the city, with the developer, and the local historical societies. The 2 date stamps will be saved, even if it means us going out there with renting a concrete cutter and doing it ourselves. So good news on that front as well. I'm getting a lot of support from the locals there. So yeah, we got some stuff going on. I mean, unfortunately, with my move, things are a little on hold. It also does look like in July we'll have a presentation from a group from the Red Bluff area, which should be pretty cool. Talking a little bit about the history, the cultural history in that area. So that should be a lot of fun. But so today we have a presentation on the Ridge Route, the historic road between Los Angeles and Bakersfield, specifically the section between Castaic and Gorman. It is known as the roadway that kept California united, kept California, not North California, South California, or whatever split they wanted to do. And it's an amazing roadway. I mean, you have a roadway that's basically been forgotten since the 30s, with original paving, with interesting locations along the road. It's quite a trip. Any trip along the ridge is definitely a good. It is worth it. Unfortunately, it has been closed for the most part since January 2005 because of landslides. Those landslides have been cleared, but it's still an issue. So, without further ado, let's get this presentation going. Get this, let's see here. So I'm going to start here. Share screen. Okay. All right. So does everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, and here we go. All right. So the historic ridge route. It's probably one of, well, it's one of the more famous roads, and certainly one of the more famous sections of US 99, and in fairness, in the entire section of, in the entirety of US 99. So what is it? What is this ridge route that we all hear about? So it was also known as the Castaic-Tejon Ridge Road. It was known as the Tejon, the Castaic Ridge Road itself, or the Castaic route, the Tejon route. But it's the original roadway built by the state connecting northern and southern California, and it follows a ridge. And this ridge is somewhat continuous over the mountains. It reduced construction costs because of the building over a ridge versus having to deal with a canyon with deeper cuts, bridges, dealing with drainage. They did look at other alternatives. Funny enough, the one that they eventually used, but again, costs were too high. And also at the time, there was a plan for a dam. Well, turns out that would have been, eventually was built, but for other reasons. Oops. So basic history is, so 1868, way back, County of Los Angeles was looking for new roads, new ways of connecting points north. They actually sent out surveys along and found a ridge between, well, what became Castaic and what became the, well, Fort Tejon. Let's put it that way. And they declared a public highway, though no road was built. Wouldn't be until 1909 that a bond act was passed to actually start funding roadways. This was on a state level. And they looked at two different variations, and they really pretty much threw away the second one, which was the Tehachapi-Soledad Pass route. So in 1912, surveyors were sent out. They staked out the future path of the ridge route. Construction began in 1914, and roadway opened October of 15, but it was oiled and graded only. Many reasons for this, part of which was there was a war going on during the teens, so they had that to contend with. Also, it's a little bit more than just there was a war going on. What we now come to know as engineered fill didn't quite exist at that time. They built the road, there were sections of fill, sections of cut. Well, in order to deal with that, they had to let it settle. So they let the road settle a bit prior to actually putting down a solid surface. But between 1918 and 1920, the roadway was closed. It was not necessarily a complete closure, but it was, closed for long periods. And the roadway was given a 20-foot wide, 4.5-inch thick steel reinforced concrete slab. This was at the time called a generous 20 feet wide. By comparison today, standard roadway is 24 feet wide. So 2 cars today passing on a 20-foot is pretty tight. Now, this roadway they built the road for its time, and its time quickly passed between May of 24 and late 28, the roadway was realigned and resurfaced. They straightened the roadway. They eliminated the sharp curves. They did what they could. It was quite a feat. And some of them, they what the curves they called daylighting. Basically, you have a blind curve. The visibility is hindered by well, a hill, and so they eliminated the hill, and allowing daylight to pass through. At some point, probably a little after 28, they just said, "We're done. We're not doing any more. This is as good as it's going to get." Started work on a new road. On October 29th, 1933, that new road opened. That was the Ridge Route alternate, which usually is called Highway 99, but in all reality, the Ridge Route was originally US 99. So here's a map from 1913 showing the state, well, as you can see here, route selected by the California Highway Commission and the objecting petitioner's route. This other road was known as the Midway Road. No idea why it was called Midway when it goes way out of the way, and the correct road is Midway. So this is basically the Mint Canyon Road, State 14, earlier US, well, eventually State Route 7, then US 6, then 14, then over to Tehachapi, so old State 50, well, old US 466, later State 58. This divergence here, my understanding of that would actually be State 233, I think it is, through, I forget the name of the town, Weed Patch, an area, but through there. And then Cal 65, 198, and then 43. If I'm taking the long way to Fresno. So what happened after the road was bypassed? In October 1934, the Ridge Route was officially relinquished to the county. So it was no longer in the state system. Not much happened until 1997 when the road was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. That's a bit of history there. Not many roadways. In fact, there's only like 2 that are actually on the National Register. In January of 01, the Ridge Route Preservation Organization was founded. And in January 05, landslides damaged the roadway. And then June of 05, the county vacated the roadway and the Forest Service took over. So additional resources on the Ridge Route. You have the Ridge Route Preservation Organization, which again founded in 2001. They are working with the Forest Service and the County of Los Angeles to reopen the roadway. They are a nonprofit, and you're welcome to make donations. There are memberships and volunteer opportunities available. You can check out their website at ridgeroute.org. There's also an online tour of the road available with photos, maps, and more from Castaic to Gorman. Been around since '96. And here's the link. SoCalRegion.com. It's actually my website, but it's the tour of the highway. Now, where is the Ridge Route? I already talked roughly where, some of the details. So this is a map from the late 1950s. Actually, a little bit earlier. Actually, this is from the mid 40s. And this is showing US 99 and the Ridge Route. The difference between 99 and the 5 is basically between Caswell's and this. Let's see, there's the big curve. Here. Between this point and this point, Interstate 5 goes over here. This is the area occupied by Pyramid Lake. So the ridge route itself, the ridge route proper, goes between Castaic and here, and State 138 near Bailey's. Came up, goes over you go. This is the ridge route alternate, going through Pirate Gorge and off to Gorman. At Pyramid Lake, there is a monument actually for the roadway. It gives a little bit of a map. That was placed by the American Society of Civil Engineers. This can be viewed basically in the parking lot for the Vista del Lago Visitor Center at Pyramid Lake. It gives a little information on the roadway. So building the road. Unfortunately, I don't have that many photos of building the road, but we'll get there. Thing is that the marvel that it was mostly just built by hand. The funding wasn't, it was built under a bond measure with no extra funding. So if they ran out of money, if they spent it all on big equipment, they wouldn't have built the road. They wouldn't have had the money. They would have had to ask the legislature. Gas tax wouldn't exist until the 1920s. So this is construction at Swede's Cut. You can see multiple horse teams here. It wasn't entirely by horse teams. Later, parts of this did have steam shovels, but for the most part, it was picks, shovels, Fresno scrapers, done by hand with a lot of labor forces. So onto the road. Here we are at the start, true start of the ridge route. This is in Castaic. We're looking south. A lot of interesting stuff going on in this photo. This line here, we can see the asphalt changing color ever so slightly, and this concrete strip, which actually is on both sides. And then there's this asphalt strip, and then there's this asphalt strip, and then there's this asphalt strip. So between these two lines here, this asphalt is overlaying 1917 concrete. It's the first section of paving laid down in this area. This section, this concrete was laid all the way down to at least Saugus, and is visible at the Santa Clara River Bridge. This strip here, and then consequently another strip on the other side, was laid in 1922 to widen the roadway to a full 20 feet. The asphalt was added at that time. This is the beginning of the ridge route paving. So this overlays 1919 concrete. Subsequently, in the 20s, throughout the 20s, the roadway was realigned, widened, and straightened. So here's the first instance. Here's the second. Here's the third. This newer asphalt is probably from the 1980s and represents the last iteration of the road. So looking north here, you can see the concrete. Going off to the right here is actually the beginning of the Elizabeth Lake Road, which eventually would go off through, this is Castaic Dam, ending, traversing what is now Lake Hughes Road. A little bit more of a close-up, you can see the large aggregate size in both styles of concrete, or both styles of asphalt, noting the 1980s, which is a lot, much smaller. So this is an aerial photograph from about 1970. You can see the dam construction underway. You can also see this location here. So where we were is right here. This is Ridge Route Road through Castaic. This is Castaic Brick. The roadway now ends right about here. This whole section has been obliterated the roadway now basically cuts off, goes through a housing development here, slices through here, and then you rejoin original roadway about here. Topo map, giving you an idea here. Here's the Elizabeth Lake Canyon Road kicking off, now known as Lake Hughes. Here's later 99, and here's the ridge route. Castaic brick relocated here. Nice 1920s postcard. Now you can see the road. First of all, the power lines. These are the Big Creek lines, built in the 20s. Actually, possibly earlier. I don't remember exactly when the Big Creek lines were built, but they not necessarily built in concert with the road. I think they may have actually slightly predated. But this section of roadway here is this section of roadway down here. So the postcard was somewhere around here. Here's the power lines. Somewhere around here, looking this way. This section of roadway is still traversable today. Also note the faint stripe down the middle and that very weak, but there, wooden railing. Now a little bit further beyond, you get to a section. Well, in this postcard, it says the first hard climb into the mountains, otherwise known as the Castaic Grade. Now you can see the roadway has a lot of twists and turns going on here. This partially exists today. It is now, it was later known, this was at a location known as Callahan's. There was a little gas station, basically it was, for all intents, it was somebody with a gas can that handed out fuel. They also had a penchant for trying to run off utility company workers through that area. But with this in mind, you have a very twisty section of roadway. Well, come the 1920s, they're trying to realign this thing as much as they can. So much travel, but so much traffic is coming over it, they got to do something. Because these curves and this roadway width, it can't handle. So they did this. You can see the roadway made these broad curves. They took, I think it was like 7 curves. Now it's one broad one. Never knew where this was. This was known as the Callahan Line Change. It's mentioned in California Highways magazines. Like it's like every other article is Callahan Line Change. Oh, look, we're doing the Callahan Line Change. Very frequently mentioned. But where was it? There's countless sections of that were realigned. Here it is. So you see so there used to be a sign here. This was a sign for it was power bank radiators. They cool. This is Callahan's here. This is roughly where the there's a water tank there today. You can see the roadway winding around. The postcard was from initially this area, this is looking south, postcard's looking north. This canyon here is where Interstate 5 goes today. Well, northbound Interstate 5, later or previously all of US 99. This is that location today. So compare this to this. This cut here, these cuts here. This is the sharp one, these are the low one. Here's the sharp one, here's the lower one. Interstate 5 southbound sliced right through it, but you see this little bench here? Well, as it turns out, here's another view of it. Here's on the bench, there's paving. This is that asphalt paving that you saw in the postcards. This is the concrete curve that was visible in that postcard and the other photos. Here's that hill. Special note to this little spot here. particularly, it's not very visible, but there's a little bit of something there. There's curbing still left. This is the beginning of ridge route curbing. I'm going to go back here a moment. Pay attention to this curbing and this curve. That's the curbing. What you saw there, that's all still there. This is still there. So is a chunk of this asphalt. The fence line now goes through this. This asphalt from 1925, still there. And this is a view looking southerly towards Marple Canyon, southbound 5, Ridge Route Road. This is roughly where Callahan's used to be located. A little bit further north, nice section of original curbing, not unlike the curbing that you saw back at Callahan's. This is one of 2 sections that is on Ridge Route Road that is very accessible that remain today. This roadway used to have a lot of curbing, only 2 sections remain today. And you can see a little bit of asphalt here. This asphalt is from the 20s, and this is the new stuff. We're still in a county maintained section here. This is just south of Templin Highway. Should have reordered that. So Callahan line going a little bit further south, Callahan line change, large sections were wiped out by Interstate 5 construction, but this is a section that remains on the northern end. As you can see here, here's a bit of the concrete coming back to the roadway. This is northbound 5, across Marple Canyon. This is Violin Saddle. Violin Canyon is on the other side of this ridge. These power lines here are part of the Big Creek lines. Further over, you can kind of see some other towers. Those are the 1907 Kern River lines. Gives you some perspective on the different roadways through here. So this is a part of the English switch. You notice travel is northbound on the left, southbound on the right. Another nice shot of the curbing, which is also steel reinforced. Looking north here towards L'Abri Mountain. This is actually L'Abri Summit here. We'll be visiting that location later on. This is on the ridge route. And just going to double back here. This tank here is a part of the California Aqueduct system. This is a surge tank between along the Angeles Tunnel, between Pyramid Lake and Castaic Lake. In the 1970s, this location, as well as the hydroelectric power station below, was featured in the movie China Syndrome and was supposed to be the site of the Ventana nuclear power plant. No nuclear meltdowns have occurred here. This is a hydro station, so there we go. Now at Templin Highway, we're approaching Templin Highway here. That's the intersection here. Is one of the few sections where the roadway had to be realigned. We have the Callahan section to the south, and then here. The original roadway dips down here quite a bit. Or rephrase that, the new roadway has to dip down quite a bit, so the old roadway remains up here. See a nice bit of concrete up here. This was realigned about 1968. Love the geology up here. This is the Ridge Basin group. And you may notice that this rock is quite contorted, but the rock below it is actually fairly, well, not smooth, but it's not as contorted. These beds here are much weaker, and this was basically deformed. This deformed when this was still somewhat plastic, easiest way to put it. It's called contorted beds. There are some other instances where this gets even worse. Just it makes for some very interesting views. So now we're at Templin. We're going to continue north. Nice postcard here again from the 20s. This section of roadway here is just before the gate. The gate is to your right. Templin Highway is just beyond this point here. So roadway comes along, winds its way down, and right about here is the end of county maintenance. Here. I will go on record in saying this sign here is incorrect. Right to pass by permission and subject to control of owner. You and I and every other person in the US is the owner. This is Forest Service roadway, not the control of this particular person who owns the land on either side of the roadway. To that end, this section of asphalt here, which you see, that was poured in 2010. So if he owns the roadway, why are public monies going to pave a roadway? That's a whole thing. Unfortunately, in 2010, this got resurfaced, public monies, but this through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. But this was one of my favorite sections of roadway, where you had the concrete winding back and forth and the asphalt straightening it out, and all of it was very visible. But here you have the 1919 concrete and the 1920s asphalt. And then we reach this, the South Gate. Hopefully you're not on the other side of this when you reach it, because if you're on the other side, you have a bit of a trek. Unfortunately, the default position of this gate is closed. The Ridge Art Preservation Organization is working to change that. Long-term plan is that the Forest Service is okay with is that it will be a seasonal opening. So the road basically be open spring to fall, and there'll be a lot more, not necessarily amenities, but the monuments and what have you will be augmented and not faded away. So just north, again, I mentioned the American Recovery and Recovery Act. I forget which direction it is. You have this concrete here. This is actually 2010 concrete. This was done as what I'm looking for. Not a temporary measure. This was done as a experiment, kind of demonstration, trying to rehab the roadway and show what could be done. In the long run, I do not want to see any more of this done. But this section in particular was done to spec. So it's 20 feet wide, 4.5 inches thick, steel reinforced. This section was badly damaged and was partly dirt. So they had to do something, and this is what they did. So it looks pretty nice. And here we are at the View Service Station. This is the southernmost marker on the road. The historic marker, you can kind of see what's left of it over here. Unfortunately, they've been damaged. But when you're traversing the road, when it gets to that point, look for these little paddles. This says View Service Station. There should be a marker adjacent. And again, this is the 2010 asphalt. This, actually, backing that up, this is actually the asphalt from 2018. Utility companies were required to rehab the roadway after the work that had been done since 2005. So this is what they did. Forest Service is okay with it. I'm mixed, as long as they don't do this too much. But this runs from the south end all the way up to Reservoir Summit. Saw this photo in 1925 California Highways magazine. And this was regarding the realigning of the roadway. This is the original paving. They haven't resurfaced this yet. But I saw this and knew exactly where it was. You are looking towards Reservoir Summit. This is the south end of the ridge route. This is just south of the National Forest end. This curve looks pretty much the same today, except doesn't have a, whatever car that is going over it. This asphalt you see here was paved just after this photograph was taken. This is just south of the National Forest end. Shows a nice example of how the roadway was before, when it's not cleared. This actually was subsequently cleared in August of 2020. Looking south from the National Forest end site, you can see the edge of the concrete, asphalt over it. National Forest end site, looking towards the north. This is Cobblestone Mountain, very prominent peak in the Santa Clarita area, just from a different angle. You can see a bit of snow on it. This was from January of 21. And then you can also see the steps. Another view that National Forest Inn was located at this location here, where unfortunately I don't have any good photographs of it readily available. The way they put it was this, to show you how loved it was, is it was the kind of place that gets into a national forest and is no addition thereto. It did not, it was a clapboard structure. These steps led up to a kind of a camping area, but is one of the last remaining bits from the road, or from the National Forest Inn. These are protected. If you see artifacts in this area, try to keep them preserved in some way. So going from the National Forest into Swede's Cut, heading north, still on an asphalt resurfaced section, looking towards Swede's Cut. It's actually right over here. You can see a bit of clouds in the summit here. And looking over here, you have Fraser Mountain. Interstate 5, be off to the left. Labrie Mountain, Labrie Summit. This is the high point of the ridge route. Here you have Reservoir Summit, plainly visible. This little dot here, that's a tree. See the roadway climbing here. We're going to follow along here. Go on the other side, weave around, loop around here. Here's Swede's Cut. What happened in this section of asphalt here, so the roadway originally went off here, and then it kind of goes into air. This was completely destroyed because of utility company work, because there's a gas and oil pipeline that runs right along the ridge here. This was required work because of a 2013 consent decree, where they were required to completely rehabilitate the roadway, either put asphalt or two-spec concrete. Unfortunately, they went with asphalt, but because the roadway can settle, I'd rather them at least go with something like that, because the concrete would break. But you can just see the beauty of the area, just the grand vistas. You got Labrie Mountain here. Knapp Ranch is, let's see, pretty sure it's over here. Now in 2005, the roadway was closed, and the roadway has been closed since. But you see this concrete here? This concrete is actually from 2006 or 7. The Ridge Route Preservation Organization is the reason this concrete exists, and the roadway was rehabilitated and able to be traversed. They contacted the Forest Service, wasn't willing to do anything, but they contacted the United States Department of Transportation, told them about this historic roadway, got them to come out, survey the road, and they provided the funding and work to rehabilitate the roadway. So this is, albeit 2 slabs of concrete, it is 20 feet wide, steel reinforced, and completely rehabilitated 3 sections of roadway that either slid, involving landslides, either land had slid onto the roadway or the roadway had slid away. I mentioned earlier about sections of curbing. This is the standard curbing that goes along the road. This is the only other section. Notice how much thinner it is compared to the earlier bit. And we're looking north here. You can see towards the Avery Mountain. We're going to be actually going that way. It's a view a little bit beyond the last photo, looking towards Whitaker Summit, Interstate 5, and 3 Mile Grade and Oak Flat. So this is one of the views where you can get of the 3 ridge routes. Ridge Route 1, Ridge Route 2, and yes, Interstate 5, Ridge Route 3. That was still known as the Ridge Route until at least the 70s. The reason this photo was taken is this particular section of rock, it's fossils. It's actually stromatolites. They are not that old. They're, I believe from the Pliocene. So, on the order of a few million years old versus much older. A little bit more detail of it. You can see the kind of botryoidal nature of them, but these are algae. That's some of the oldest life forms on the planet, actually. Give you an idea of the twists and turns of the ridge route. So that photo you just saw was taken at this location here. You can see the road making its twists, big loop here. And this is Swede's Cut, continuing north. And again, the 3 ridge routes. It's one of my favorite stretches of the road. You can see all 3 roadways, really gives you an impression of how many changes took place. I mean, this roadway is twisting around multiple times. You have this one, which just makes its way up the hill, and then people are going 70 plus on this one. Speed limit was 15 miles an hour here. This was built to much higher standards. I believe the state speed limit at the time was around 45. And then this has a design speed of 70 miles an hour. This is looking to the south from Swede's Cut. Roadway winds its way. This section was known as Serpentine Drive. And you can see it certainly winds its way through. And this is one of the sections where you can truly see why they called it the Ridge Route. Looking beyond these hills here, this is Oat Mountain between the Santa Clarita Valley and San Fernando Valley. Here's the San Gabriel Mountains. This is actually Mount Lukens above Glendale, Burbank. Further on, this actually is either Pacifico, or potentially Mount San Antonio. This is about Mount Gleason here. This is from my postcard collection. Got this. This is a view 1920. Looking from below the power lines adjacent to Swede's Cut. Swede's Cut's actually over here. Roadway twists around, goes around, winds. So similar view before. This canyon, Osito Canyon, is completely empty. No Interstate 5, no ridge route alternate. Power lines still there. Pretty cool view. You also see a heck of a lot more curbing on the roadway. A little bit later, we're looking at about 1925. Realignments have taken place. Here's where the pipelines cross the roadway, where there's now that little bridge. Curbing that you saw earlier is located over here. You can see the asphalt straightening things out. By November or so of 1925, realignment started in May of 1924 at the south end. By November of 25, they reached to just north of Swede's Cut. Postcard view around that same period. So this curve, It's this curve here. This is a view looking, more modern view, looking towards the big cut here. This is below, again, below Swede's cut. This is the site of a few rock slides that have taken place. And Swede's cut itself. Spend some time here when you get a chance. There's fossils of various styles. You have, there are, let's see, I found fossil leaves. There are ripple marks from, waves. And then there are just, water flowing. And you also have charcoal deposits. Quite a bit going on here. Plus this is, okay, so Swede's cut. This is the deepest cut on the entire highway, 110 feet. It was quite the marvel. It was something around, over 1 million cubic yards of material moved. The original cut, albeit we're looking at two different angles here, was much steeper. And if you look here, you can definitely see all these rocks have been cleared. You can see it's much steeper in the original. They did this to save on money. Not sure how much they saved when the cut keeps gradually getting wider. The geology is not kind to them here. This postcard was taken, this photo was 1915. This is just after the roadway opened, before it was paved. Well, with concrete, because this is the oiled earth section. Postcard, a little bit colorized. It's not quite as colorful going through there. But you can see, even then, there's still dirt filling in the edges of the cut. I thought this was rather amusing because this postcard looks not unlike how it is today. So continuing north, this postcard, a little bit misnamed. It says, looking towards Swede's Cut, Serpentine Drive in the distance. Yes and no. This roadway here is actually not the ridge route. Swede's Cut is over to the right, goes around, and then this is eventually the remainder of the roadway. Neither of these are Serpentine Drive or Swede's Cut. And again, curbing. But this is on the road between Swede's Cut and Reservoir Summit. So this is a section of that roadway going north towards Reservoir Summit. It's one of my favorite stretches. Concrete's in really good shape overall. There are some of it's better, some of it's worse. Get nice sections of asphalt. And again, the asphalt's still historic. It's not all about the concrete. The asphalt is from the 20s. It's experimental. It's very historic in its own right. Nice section of concrete. You can see the differences between the two sections. Now here's the fun part. Visibility, you a north run of the road or a south run of the road, sunlight changes things. It's not very visible, but if you look right here, white striping from the 1920s. Some of the original striping ever placed on a roadway like this. So this at one point was center line. You can see how much material, the roadway is overgrown. But that's center line. That's original 1920s white striping. Not visible in all directions. If you look in the middle here, you can see a faded stripe. This is the reason. This photo, it shows part of the description of the ridge route was as it spirals to it. Let's actually, you know what? Do it this way. To quote a postcard, which was actually take from a San Francisco Chronicle article from 1915. On the ridge, it skirts 1,000-foot precipices, disappears within cuts that are tunnel-like in depth. As it spirals to attain higher altitude, the motorist catches glimpses of the road at a half dozen different levels. None of these are qualities you really want in a roadway, but they were touting it as, oh, it's so great. Nice photo, beautiful concrete. This is that lone tree nearing the top of Reservoir Summit. Just visible is the roadway approaching Labre Summit, Labre Mountain, Sawmill. This is looking south from the top of the hill at Reservoir Summit. Nice section of concrete here. The ridge further along. Moving all the way south, this is roughly where National Forest Inn is located. Newhall Pass, San Gabriel's, Santa Susana's. Some perspective here. So that photo was taken from this location here, looking down. Reservoir Summit, why is it called that? Here's the reservoir. One of 3 reservoirs built on the road. This is the northernmost one. There was one at above, not very visible, but above the National Forest Inn site, and another one just south of what is now Templin Highway. These were built connected by a 4-inch pipe that held water for the concrete from they were building the road. Water originated at the northern end near Sandberg. Reservoirs now are basically dry. You can get an idea of the roadway winding around here. The site of the Reservoir Summit inn or motel or what have you was here. Overhung the edge of the cliff. You can see little bits of concrete from the foundations. Not much remains today, and there's very few, if any, photos of the site and the reservoir itself. Fairly overgrown. In time, Ridge Road Preservation Organization may actually go through and clear it, which could be helpful. This is looking a bit towards the north. You can see Fraser Mountain, Gorman area, Tehachapi's. So continuing further north, the roadway starts displaying some interesting features. You don't get as much of the super elevation south of this point, but you do to the north. When the roadway was being built, or before, backing that up, but before the roadway was built, engineers went all over to see, how do we build a mountain roadway? This is the first time we're going to do it, so let's do it right. Well, they sort of did it right. The one thing they learned is super elevation as a way to help reduce gradients, to help ease curves, and help with speeds. Well, in this case, they took it to a bit of an extreme, so the roadway almost is warped as it goes through the curves. It's like a slalom course or a bobsled course. It's that warped. But this is the way they built the roadway, trying to see what they can do. The warp sections over here, looking towards the Reservoir Summit. It says the summit. This bit of a misnomer. Reservoir Summit was one of many summits along the roadway. The highest point actually was Labre at 4233, which was even higher than Tejon. So pay attention to this particular section of roadway here. Here it is today, winding to the summit. Not exactly a straight on shot, but that's this section right here. Section of roadway a little bit to the north. It looks wider, but you remember the striping would have followed it over here. So this would have just been extra roadway. This particular section, let's see. I'm getting ahead of here. It's hidden in the brush here, but there's actually a section of wooden railing. I believe this to be the southernmost. It is the southernmost section of wooden railing that I have found on the ridge route. And even then, it's just a stub. A little bit further north, nice section of concrete, nice section of asphalt. This is looking west towards, I believe this is Black Mountain, Fraser Mountain in the distance. This is the area, Hungry Valley off-highway vehicle area. And these are the hills over above Gorman. This is, I believe, San Emilio Mountain. Now this photo is from the 1920s, just after realignment of a section of the roadway. As you can see here, concrete's winding back and forth, and they just went straight through. But what's interesting about this location is this here, these two strips of concrete. They're still there today, and we have no idea what they are. I've stumped Harrison Scott, the guy that wrote the book on the ridge route, that has done the most research. I showed him this and he's like, I have no idea what the heck this could be. There is a water line, the 4-inch water line that goes between the reservoirs, goes along the ridge. It does not, there's no precedent for there to be a protected section here. It's too narrow for a runaway truck ramp, and why would there be one in the middle of the road after a curve next to railing? There are no steps there. There was nothing above this point. There's no reason whatsoever the concrete would have been poured, but considering how far water would have had to been taken to get to this point, it does not make sense. So this is the mystery of the ridge route. This section today. And here are the concrete strips. Here's that roadway curving, and there's the asphalt. This asphalt here is the same asphalt that you see here. That is the beauty of this road, is you're literally looking at how much has this view changed since 1933? There's been growth, but the view has not changed that much. The paving certainly hasn't. Now this hill here, that hill there. Looking back towards that location, it's just a beautiful views up here. Roadway winding in around. Now under this cut here, this was done in August of 20. There was a large fire in the area, and the roadway, they used the roadway as a staging area. So they tried to do some clearing, which in the long run actually benefited the road. Just a bit further north, this wooden post actually is a part of it's culvert marker. One little bit remaining, but wooden post, it's amazing it hasn't burned. It's located just over here. This post here, this post here. Nice section of concrete. Nice section of asphalt. And what I like to call the 100-year mistake, the 100-year-old mistake. At some point, while the concrete was still wet, so we're looking at probably 1918, 1919, somebody in potentially Model T drove along the concrete, realized it was wet, did a 3-point turn to back out of it, tried to repave it, didn't do a good job. So here we are, 100 years later, still looking at their mistake. Still able to even track down the entire tread because, well, they drove through wet concrete, but it's a 3-point turn remaining today. You can see the tracks. A little bit further north, the northern gate. Do keep in mind that you see this, please do not traverse this. Now, I will point out that somebody in 2020 thought it was a good idea to mark on the gate that the road does not go through. I would have thought that the gates would have been a clue, but evidently not. Just north of the gate is another section of white striping. A lot more visible here. This is actually the site of the Templin, but it's just past the site. So Templin, here we go. Nice stone work here. Notice the elevation. If you know your elevations, 4144 is the height of Tejon Pass today. So you're as high as Tejon Pass, and you still have more to climb. It had a gas station. Oops, not too many. I have to add other photos. So there's an archway that remains here today. Well, sort of remains. There's a wall, same stone wall, although this is all gone. Just the back of it's remaining. The archway was actually rehabilitated and replaced by in part by the Ridge Route Preservation Organization. That was a project back in about 03, 04. I'm not quite sure what Caliph 36 is. That could be, since it's Highway 99, it was likely the postal code. So just beyond Templin, this is a good aerial representation of the changes that took place. Concrete's going along here. Asphalt just swipes right through it. Again, section of white striping. This white striping is over in this area here. Nice section of trees, gradually approaching Les Bray maintenance station. Another saddle. This is also another roadway that branches off that goes to Sawmill Mountain. So getting a bit further north, we have, again, this postcard, incorrect. This is not Les Bray Summit. In fact, it's still climbing beyond this, even in the photograph. You are looking actually at what was called Granite Gate. This lump of rock still exists. It is actually not granite, it is sandstones. This is looking towards Templin, or Templin's over here. And then further on, the road continues off this way. This is Granite Gate. I'll be at a different angle, looking westerly. This is Fraser Mountain. This is, a different day. We can see the air pollution coming through from the Central Valley. Further north again, you can see how wide the concrete originally was. This is the edge of the concrete, a little bit of wooden railing, what's left of it. And all this dirt. Eventually, the Ridge Route Preservation Organization is working to remove this dirt and potentially even install railing, try to get the roadway back to where it should be. Nice section of asphalt, large aggregate. Part of the problem is that asphalt is breaking up, so you get potholes forming. This particular section here is at what was known as Horseshoe Bend. As many curves as there were on the road, this was the biggest. It was certainly the most famous because the roadway dived in this canyon here and popped out this other side. And then in by 1925, they just straightened the curve. This is looking to the south toward Les Bray Summit. It's a beautiful area up there. These are going to be a little out of order, unfortunately. I'll blame me. But this is just north of Sandberg's. Sandberg's is just a bit above this to the right. But again, you can see 3 instances of realignment. The original alignment, straighten it here, and then straighten it again. There's also a section of wooden railing. This is one of the last bits of wooden railing on the entire roadway. Look at any postcard of the road, look at any photos back in its heyday, you'll see railing all over the place. That's it. I thought to include this, thought this was interesting. This is a description from a postcard set of the Ridge Route from the 20s. After reading a California Highway Bulletin from 1916, I realized where they got the text. This is, for the most part, from an article in the San Francisco Chronicle on the roadway, and it's some of it's verbatim, some of it's paraphrased, but yeah, the way they describe the road, it sounds, oh, this is a lovely road, but we look at it now and realize, yeah, these are all the problems of the road. So cuts tunnel-like in depth, so blind spots, spirals to attain higher altitudes, lots of curves, catches the roads, at different levels. Again, lots of curves, steep grades. The highest point, 4233, that's Liebre Summit. So again, a problem. You have a lot of adverse grade. You're going up higher than what is now the summit. And you're going even further into the mountains. So you have even more weather problems. But they did this. It was an amazing road at the time. And the fact that it remains is in the shape it is now is still amazing. This is really a wonder. So Sandberg, if you are in the Los Angeles area and you watch local weather reports, you will see, and in Sandberg, the high temperature today will be 65 and the low will be 20. Sandberg, nothing there now, but that's still a reporting station. There's still a weather station up there. KABC loves to use Sandberg. So does KNBC. So in 21, the roadway had been just barely open. You can see snow in this photograph. The roadway that Sandberg was opened at the time of the roadway. It was designed, they wanted to capture that traffic. And they eventually augmented the place. So he said Sandberg's Meals here, and here it is again. This wooden structure was, it was the classiest joint on the road. There was reported to be a sign, whether or not it was true, it said, truckers and dogs not allowed. Shows you what they thought of truckers at the time. This is a touring car place. We want some highbrow crowd. This place actually lasted until August 1962, when it unfortunately burned. There were stories of it being, for some reason, there were stories of it being a Nazi hideout during the war. Wasn't a thing. It wasn't a brothel. It wasn't any of these things. Harold Sandberg didn't do that. So you can see this nice postcard of the locations, touring cars, all the class joints here. You got the ladies here, well dressed. It was quite a nice place on the road. This wall is still around, as is these steps, but all the structure is gone. Foundations still remain here. That's it. So, and a little bit out of order. This is what remains of the wooden railing on the Ridge Route. This is not unlike the style that the city of Los Angeles uses, even today, surprisingly. Go in the Hollywood Hills, you'll see similar railing. It's painted white. It has a piece across and this bar here. same curve, railings off to the side. Just below Pine Canyon Road, you get this National Forest sign. This probably dates back to the 30s or 40s. This is the way the Forest Service signs used to be. Not many of these left today, but very substantial sign. Adjacent to that sign, you see this sign here. I believe this actually is a reproduction, because the sign was gone for some time. But it's a little sign describing the old ridge route. It opened in 1915. It was indeed hailed as a miracle of modern engineering, but maximum speed 15 miles an hour. What is the 44 miles over the former road? Former road would have taken you one of two ways. Either over Soledad Pass and Tehachapi Pass, or you would have taken what was also known as Tanner's Pass, going over San Francisco Canyon, but likely they're referring to the Mid-Canyon roadway. Postcard view, just looking looking to the north, just north of that location. So, bits of this railing still exist, but it's just stubs at this point. And interesting to note, two different styles of wooden railing adjacent to each other. Funny enough, this particular curve here in, I believe it was February of 21, there was a car chase. And it was televised. Oh, look, we're following them. Thankfully, they were coming from the north. And as soon as they hit the first really big curve on the ridge route, high speeds and ridge route are two things that are very disparate. They flew right off the road, crashed the car. They eventually were caught. But yeah, so car chase here, and not more than a couple of weeks earlier, a couple of three sets of big rigs also traversed the road. Not good. Just looking a little bit, this is the end here. So we're looking at the Antelope Valley. These hills, unfortunately, are going to be developed in not too short a time for a development called Centennial. State 138 traverses the valley here. And you're looking towards the Tehachapis. And that is it. So let's see here. Stop the sharing. Go back to that. Okay. Well, that is the ridge route. There's always a lot more to cover when it comes to that road. I could spend the next 3 or 4 hours on it, if not more.
Like I said, when I was up there last month, I wish. Now I got online on the Ridge Rat's website, and they got a little section on road conditions, and they said that there'd been a little bit of rockfall up there, and so sure enough there was, and so I didn't get to go as high as I wanted to. I certainly didn't get as high as Labor Summit, but the one picture that you did show, where you showed, where the road company said, you can see where Labor Summit is. That's about as far as I got. So, because I remember that view, and it's like I said, if I had actually had a vehicle that had where I wasn't afraid of getting a flat tire on some of that rock, then I would have continued on. But I figure, well, yeah, it's going to be there next time, so I'll catch it next.
Well, I can assure you that the roadway is traversable all the way through by most vehicles. Every once in a while, you may have to get out and clear some rocks, but for the most part, it's good.
Yeah, and I have an all-wheel drive vehicle, but no, there had been some rockfall there, and I kind of figured that farther on it probably would have been okay, but at that point we said, you know what, I got a long trip ahead of me here. Let's not tempt fate.
Caution is still good.
Yeah.
So,
But it is a beautiful area up there. I mean, that's we stopped at Sandberg's and like I said, when I've got a picture. In fact, I was just looking at it as you were doing the presentation. Yeah, sure enough, there's the rock wall. So yeah, pretty cool.
So does anybody have any questions or comments about the roadway or anything else?
I think you mentioned it in the presentation, but how is the relationship with the Forest Service right now?
Well, between the Ridge Route Preservation Organization and the Forest Service, it's actually quite good. They are quite cooperative, and the roadway is going to reopen. I can say this with 100% certainty. I have confidence in this, and they're giving me that. They want it reopened. There are certain conditions that need to be met, conditions that the Ridge Route Preservation Organization is giving, and the conditions that the Forest Service is giving.
Mm-hmm.
But they are achievable.
Yes.
It's good.
That is wonderful to hear.
It hasn't been this good in quite some time.
Yeah, because I recall at some point that the relationship was a bit contentious for a while. So I was just.
Yes. Yeah, that's gone.
Beautiful.
Our RPO will be reopening the road, and it's actually pretty cool.
So is RPO essentially going to be tasked with realizing yes, it's a Forest Service road, but is the organization going to be the primarily tasked with upkeep and maintenance, or?
There will be some maintenance that is done by the RRPO, but it's mostly like the big thing that has been done thus far by the RRPO is keeping drains open and working on like large rock slides, if possible, removing them. That was done. There was a big one that was dealt with last year that actually utility companies took care of the rest. So
along the route, and this is probably a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Have all the culverts been identified?
Yes.
That is that okay, these culverts are here. They need to be kept cleared. They need to be, and just part of the checklist for maintaining the road, I guess.
All of the culverts along the Forest Service section of the roadway have been identified and marked.
Excellent.
They are marked with, if you ever traverse the roadway, you'll see paddles, like fiberglass paddles with numbers on them. Those numbers identify the culverts, and the zero end is on the south end.
Okay.
There will also be mileage markers placed along the roadway to help further identify points along the road.
Excellent. Very good.
So yeah, and for that, if you're curious about the Ridge Route itself and the organization, ridgeroute.org is the site. That's where it's going to be augmented even further with more information about the history of the road itself, more than just what the organization does.
Yes, I've got a bookmark for it, so I check it once in a while.
But things are moving along. It's slow right now. Right now it's a little slow, but things are moving. There's a lot of background stuff that's happening. It's a bit like the 99 Association, where it seems like nothing really happens, but and then suddenly, boom, town gets signed.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you have time for a life, but it sounds like this pretty much is.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts. looking forward to getting the, the section of concrete saved out there in Calamasa. Got a lot of stuff going on with that. So I did find it somewhat amusing that recently. So I did a presentation in Beaumont, and I got the concrete thing going on in Calamasa, and also dealing with a antique store in Yucaipa, and now the thing in Redlands. So every town along there, I got something going.
Yeah.
Every town is like,
you would think that over that section of concrete, you would think, because I know we have a couple of sections of old Pacific Highway /99 north of Seattle that are the original brick road, and they're just sections. But
been on them. They're beautiful sections. They're very, very short, but
they've incorporated it into little roadside parks, so you'd think that maybe this developer could have done something along those lines, or if the development that they're putting in there just totally prohibits that. I don't know, but
the way that they're completely regrading that area.
Oh, okay.
So,
nothing.
You won't even be able to figure, if you were to take a photo and then you're trying to go back there 10 years from now, you wouldn't know where to begin. I'll probably have a bit of a time trying to figure out where it was, and I know it, by heart.
Right.
So we're saving the date stamps, and at least we got some.
Yeah, well, it's like I tell my local, I'm on the board of my local historical society, and it's like I told them, I said, you can't. I shouldn't say you can't stop progress. You can alter it, but by and large, if you can't preserve it, then at least record it for future look at history, I guess. Show that it was there, where it was at, that we actually tried to save a piece of it, or at least preserve the location, so where it was at whatever point in time. And so it's a lot easier to kind of reconcile what's going on. If you can't stop it, at least record it.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. Okay. So yeah, something we're gonna at least get something there. So that pretty much concludes the presentation. Nobody else has any other questions. That pretty well is it.
I'm good. Any presentation along the lines of what you just did is wonderful. In fact, I had my wife sitting here with me watching, because she's kind of my I'm teaching her. She's, oh, is that a piece of old road over there? Yeah, that is. So teach her to be my co-pilot, so to speak, here.
Yes, and also look forward to additional stuff in the future. And we're looking, if anybody, we're looking for other people to help with presentations or things along the highway. We'll get there. So again, thank you everybody for being here. And our next presentation, I don't know the exact date, but it'll be in early July. Should be the first Tuesday in July.
Excellent. All right. Well, again, thank you. As normal, you put on a good presentation, and thank you for bearing the load of this organization.
Well, thank you again, and look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.
I second all of that. That was very nice, Michael.
Oh, well, thank you.